Mark Heath earned his bachelor's degree in mass communication from Towson University in 2000. He completed his MAT in secondary education in 2003. Mr. Heath has taught math in the Baltimore County Public Schools since 2003. These are his reflections.
Mr. Heath, thank you so much for coming in and sharing with us your preparation to become a teacher and your subsequent career. This will help us mightily in our effort to chronicle sort of the evolution of teacher education at Towson University across time.
Well, thank you for having me.
I think a good place to begin is in the beginning. So if you would you share with us a little bit about your early social context, where you grew up, what you were thinking about as you went through school as possible things you'd like to do, careers you'd like to have,
Sure.
and that kind of thing.
Okay, well, I actually grew up in Harford County, which is only about 30 minutes from here, in a place called Joppatown. And I wasn't the best academic student. Growing up, I had two brothers. One was a twin, and we constantly fought with each other for our own identity. And so my focus at the time was more sports related, and I wanted to play baseball and soccer, and Towson was the closest university, and we had a lot of exposure growing up to Towson and seeing the soccer team. But I really didn't know Towson as a school. Yeah, and so I wasn't focused on that part. It was more like the athletics piece to it.
Sure.
So I wanted to be an athlete, and I think that's a lot of boys' dreams, just to be this professional athlete. But when I went into high school, at Joppatown High School, I had an experience where we had a radio station in our school. And so I was really involved in running the radio station and advertisement within the school itself. And so I thought, hey, I want to be on TV, I want to be on radio, somewhere in that field. And the teacher that I had, Mr. Bands, he had a connection here to the university as well. And so he kind of guided me in this direction into mass communications. When I left high school, I went to a different community college first, just to kind of get my feet wet and to see if college is what I wanted, and the direction, because I was the first in my family to go to college. And so that was very new to us. And once I finished at the community college, I then transferred over to Towson because I had heard they had a wonderful mass communications program. But there was always a part of me growing up too that loved working with people. And I was really involved with my church and the elementary school in my community, and I kind of thought I wanted to be a teacher too. And in looking at Towson, it was, do I want to become a teacher, or do I want to go into mass comm? Which way do I want to go? And at the time when I was making the decision, I already had some of the schooling for mass communications. Haven't had anything for the education piece. And then there's the whole money piece.
Of course.
So in honesty, I went for mass communications because I was just in love and just enthralled with that aspect.
Absolutely.
Being on TV, being on the radio, and I've already had some of the classes to go with it. So when I came here to Towson, I enrolled as a mass communications major. And about halfway through Towson, I decided, no, teaching is what I really wanted to do. A lot of my friends were involved with education, and the more and more I looked at it, I just really saw that as a lifestyle, not as a career choice, meaning education. And I just thought, that lifestyle is more appealing to me, not just as a career, but who I wanted to be and how I wanted to impact others and their lives for a positive reason. And so I talked to an advisor, and I found out that if I stopped where I was currently and changed my major, then I'm essentially going back 2 years. So I finished with my degree in mass communications and decided I was coming back to learn how to be a teacher. And so I thought, I'm going to come back and get my master's degree through the MAT program. And so I did that, and have loved it ever since, and would recommend it to anybody. So it's just, the way I look at it, it's not the monetary value, it's the everyday interaction with the children.
Right.
You can't put a price tag on it. You know, when you see a child's face just light up with excitement, I mean, that's it. That's what we're here for, to help those children and to see that excitement.
Yeah.
And so that's why I decided to go into education.
Right.
And
So when you were here for your bachelor's degree in mass comm, were you also doing athletic things at the same time?
no.
No. Okay.
I wasn't skilled enough to come to Towson for athletics.
I see.
My brother was. He played for the baseball team, and so that was fun to see. And but
No.
not, I mean, intramurals and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
the things that Towson offered to a student in that regard was fantastic, because you had intramurals, you had a lot of different activities, and that was something that was also very nice about Towson, is that if there was something that interests you, you could find it. And if it wasn't here already at the university, there was usually a faculty member or an advisor, somebody who was willing to help you get it started, whatever the club or whatever the program was. And that was just very different than what my high school experience was. If it wasn't already there, then you couldn't start it. We're here at Towson, you know, they allowed you to just branch out and explore new experiences and to guide and help you in any way that they could. So
That's nice. So at the end of your undergrad, you've got a degree in mass comm, and probably you're looking for some kind of employment.
yeah.
Yeah. And where did that take you?
When I was finishing up my undergraduate degree, I was fortunate enough to meet this one lady from the American Cancer Society, and was able to get a job there. And I was a community specialist and income developer. And what that comes down to is there's a program that they run called Relay for Life. And it's a fundraising program within the communities to bring money in for research and for awareness programs. And it allowed me to stay here in the area and work with the people within the community. And because my job was solely to work with the volunteers and to help them put together this event. And the event was once a year, and it was an all-day, all-night event where they would walk around and attract, just kind of showing that the battle of cancer wasn't just at 10 o'clock at night when it was convenient. It was all day long. And I had roughly about 500 volunteers that I worked with. And that also showed me that that's what I liked. I liked the interaction with the people and working with them and educating them on whatever the item might be. In this case, it was cancer awareness. And I can't tell you the number of my volunteers that told me, you would be an excellent teacher. You would make an excellent, you know, educator. And of course, they kind of knew what my goal was, because I had told them when I started working with American Cancer Society, I wanted to, first of all, put my undergraduate degree to work for me.
Absolutely.
But I also wanted to start earning money so that I could come back to Towson and be able to afford the master's program. And so it took me about 2 years to be able to do that. And then I enrolled into the MAT program, which was at that time a 1-year master's degree program, which was just, that was an insane year. That was a really crazy year, but well worth it. And
Well, tell me, share with us that year, what that entailed and what made it so crazy.
okay, well, I have to say that that 1 year is probably the craziest year of my life. There was so much going on. My wife, Marie, who you've met, Marie Punzillo, she and I had been dating, and we actually met here at Towson. And she was already in the education field, and we had talked about this master's program, this degree, and how the 1 year would go. And I'm looking at it on paper, I'm going, oh, this is workable, there's no problem. I can work this, and I can continue working at the American Cancer Society so that I can earn the money, and hey, this will be nice. And about 1 month into the program, I had to go into my supervisor at the American Cancer Society and tell him, no, this isn't going to work anymore. But it was really intense. We started in the summer with one class, and probably one of the best professors I've ever had in elementary education, because we had to declare right away whether we were looking for secondary ed or elementary education. And I was looking more towards elementary education. I just loved working with the little guys. They're just fantastic. Their enthusiasm to want to learn And it's not about, oh, I've got to go to school today. It's they're coming to play, and they see education as playing. And what a great way to learn is just through exploration, you know. And so I knew that I wanted to work with the little guys, so I went for elementary ed. And our first class was in the summer. It was for 2.5 weeks, and it was a 3-hour course. Well, and in fact, it was 3 hours every day on top of the work that you had to do that night to get ready for the next day.
Yes.
And so it worked out to about 6 to 7 hours a day. But the group that I was with, we started out with, I think it was around 40 candidates. By the time we were done, we had 22. But
by the time you were done the whole program?
I'm sorry, yeah, by the time we were done the program, it was down to 22 students who graduated for a variety of different reasons.
Sure.
But we had become such a close-knit group within that first week of that first class that even though this class was just for a couple hours a day, even with the professor, we extended it to about 5 hours a day because he would just stay around and talk with us and give us an insight as to what this program was really going to look like and what the schools would look like once you get into the application part. So that was a nice beginning to the program.
Yes.
And then we got into the fall. And in the fall we had 2 classes. And then we started going into the classrooms. And that was probably when it all started to really display how intense this program was. You get up at 6 in the morning to get to the school. And at the time I was living in Harford County and my internship was in Anne Arundel County. So that meant I had to deal with going down 95 and through the Harbor Tunnel every morning, and so I would have to get up even sometimes at 5 o'clock in the morning to get to the elementary school in time. And I went to George Cromwell Elementary and Park Elementary, and had an experience teaching both 1st and 5th grade during that time. But once you finished with your day in the classroom, we then drove back to Towson to take a class at night. And so we had just a little bit of time, so we all would meet over at Bill Bateman's and kind of talk about our day. Yeah, and figure out what was going on, and it's, all right, now we're off to class. And that was just a lot of fun. It was intense, very grueling and tiring. But in the end, when we sat there at the graduation ceremony, we kind of looked at each other, and it was just, you created such a bond with one another because it's a program like nothing any of us have ever experienced. But it wasn't just a bond with the teacher, or with, you know, each other. I say teachers, I'm thinking of us all as teachers. But with our professors. And I'm still very good friends with one of the professors from the program now, and that's Dr. Crash.
Oh, sure.
I see him from time to time, and you know, we get to talk, and now that I'm a mathematics teacher, we get to see each other at different conventions, and I don't think I would have had that connection if it wasn't for the program and how intense that program was, because the dedication from the teachers of Towson University is nothing like I've ever experienced before. And it was just, that made me enjoy my experience a lot more.
Absolutely.
So.
We interviewed him 2 days ago.
Did you?
Yes, same day we interviewed Marie.
Okay.
And he always wanted to be a math teacher.
And he's perfect for it. I had this one moment where in the program, I wasn't quite sure what he wanted us to do on a particular assignment. And so he said, well, why don't you just come meet with me in my office hours, you know, before class one day, because I know you're busy at the school and you only have a little bit of time. And I went to his office, but prior to getting, you know, to meet him, I heard this heavy metal music going on, and it was blaring, and I'm thinking, what student is blaring music in a professor's office? Like, that's a little bold, and it turned out to be him. And I don't know, I guess I just had this picture of a professor just sitting there, you know, the stereotypical picture.
Thinking.
Just thinking and working in books, and here he is listening to heavy metal, and I'm like, okay, you are a human being, you know, it was different, so.
It's sort of like when your third graders see you in a grocery store and they go,
right, you live somewhere
Mr.
else.
Heath buys groceries.
Right, exactly, so. But I'll never forget him in that experience, but also the way he presented the subject to us.
So that fall semester, you're in schools, but you're not really actually doing any teaching yet, or are you doing a little bit of?
A little bit. It was dependent on the mentor.
I see.
So we would go in just for an observation period.
Uh-huh.
And depending on the mentor, they would let you do a little bit.
I see.
And I had an excellent mentor, and it was my first grade mentor. And
this
day
is
two,
in
this
Anne
is
Arundel
Anne Arundel
County?
County. This is at George Cromwell Elementary. And the second day in, she said, well, you know the routines. Here we go. I'm going to let you take over the morning math drill.
Oh,
And
wow.
that was an experience.
Uh-huh.
You know, the first time you're sitting there in front of all these little guys, and they're looking at you for instruction, and it's you. You know, because now you're no longer the student, you're the teacher.
You are.
And that is an odd experience when you put a title on it. Because when I coached soccer, a good friend of mine, his brother was looking for a coach for their soccer team, so we took over the team.
Uh-huh.
It was nothing, you know. For us, that was just very natural.
Uh-huh.
But being in front of these little guys to teach them, whoa, that was a big experience, but I loved it. And the adrenaline afterwards, it was like you just want to chase that adrenaline when you watch the kids and how they just look up to you and they want to learn. And so that was a good experience.
Yes.
And that was one of the moments when I learned, yeah, this is what I want to do. I'm in the right spot.
So when do you start doing kind of almost full time?
The full time started right around January.
Uh-huh.
When we kind of had that break. We didn't really have the winter break.
No.
And that was a bit of a surprise to us too. I mean, you see it in the course descriptions that
Right.
you don't get the break, but as a college student, you love that winter break.
Uh-huh.
And so we jumped right in.
Uh-huh.
And we were supposed to have both a middle school experience and an elementary school
Yes.
experience because the certification was first grade up to 8th grade.
Uh-huh.
And I fought tooth and nail not to go into the middle school.
Interesting.
Because prior to deciding that I wanted to go into teaching, I
Uh-huh.
also, a lot of friends said, go and substitute.
Uh-huh.
Go into the schools around your area and see what levels you like. And
Yes.
I nixed high school right away.
Uh-huh.
That just wasn't for me.
Yes.
I went into the middle school level, and knowing myself as a middle school student, I said, no way. There is just no way I'm going to go into middle school level. I'm here for elementary. And so there was something that happened with the middle school that we were supposed to go to. It was just a unique situation.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't anything bad. It was just there was some transition in the staffing.
I see.
So Larry Ascione, who was another student in the program with me, we had gotten moved over to Park Elementary. So we only had an elementary experience.
I see.
So in January, we both started at the same school teaching first grade with a pair of teachers. So
Uh-huh.
when we took over full time, it was really interesting to see how much time and devotion the teacher has to have. It's not just from bell to bell, and it's just not an hour before, an hour after. It's maybe an hour or two before, and then you take everything home sometimes, and you live it. And that's what I mean by a lifestyle. It's a career, but if you want to be a teacher, you got to think of it as more of a lifestyle. You've got to live this, and that's, I think, what makes the difference between a good teacher and a great educator. You live it, and that becomes who you are. And that was pretty tough at first, you know, because we also had the classes we had to maintain too, and where do you get the time? And so when Larry and I would be on the phone 12 midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, discussing lesson plans for the next day and trying to get it together and make adjustments to, all right, we wrote the lesson plans, you make the copies for this lesson, you make the materials for that lesson,
And everything's a first time.
Right.
Every
Yeah.
lesson plan is a first lesson plan.
Yeah, it was interesting because a lot of the teachers said, don't worry, your first year is going to be tougher than this. And we kept thinking, how is it tougher than this? This is pretty tough. You know, we're staying up to 2 o'clock in the morning, getting up at 5 and 6 that same morning to come to work, to do it all over again. How can it be harder?
Yeah, and you would be teaching all the subjects if you're teaching first grade.
Yes.
Not just reading, not just math.
Yeah, so you're picking up 3 and 4 different curriculums that are written in various ways. You know, it's not all just the same format. And yeah, that was very interesting too, and difficult. But in the end, like I said, it was a great experience, and
so did you?
I think I'd do it again.
So you did first grade, and didn't you say you also did fourth grade?
Fifth grade.
Oh, fifth grade.
Yeah, so we went through a period where it was about, I think it was 6 weeks, where we observed first grade, and then we transitioned and did an observation period for fifth grade. And then after that second observation period, wherever your placement currently was, so for example, I was in fifth grade, your teaching practicum started in that same placement.
I see.
And then you went back to your first placement, kind of like a bookend.
Okay.
And so when I went into fifth grade, that was over at Park Elementary, which was in Anne Arundel County, and it was a brand new school. And
Nice.
it was beautiful. You had the lockers in the room, the bathrooms were in the room, the classroom was enormous. It was a very transient population, and that was my first experience with that. And it was interesting because where I taught first and fifth grade, they were far enough away from each other, but a lot of the students passed to the same school.
I see.
And that was kind of neat to see that, and because I had that connection with the students for the whole time in some of the cases, because they moved back and forth a lot. And that also was a unique experience that Towson prepared us for, because before we actually took over for the teaching practicum, we had a class where it just kind of taught us about, all right, it was an English class, and so they were teaching us a little bit about the language arts program. But the professor had a lot of sidebars, I guess you would call it, and he would take 1 hour out of the class and just devote it to, all right, now let me tell you what it's really like. Let's put the language arts piece aside. And what are you going to do with the student who's out for a week? What are you going to do with the student who has moved for 2 months and has now joined you? And how do you handle just the procedural aspects? And I thought that was so, I don't know if astute is the right word, but for the professor to realize that we're getting the education on how to teach the subjects and kind of what it's like to be in the classroom, but let's get your hands dirty and look at the real stuff. And the procedural aspects, the administration, because that's a part of the job too. And a lot of people see teaching as, well, you're just teaching your subject. No, you're caring for the child. You know, you're there to help them with all the life experiences that they're going through, but how do you keep them with the rest of the class, you know, and included, and just the social piece too. And that was a wonderful class to have too.
Yes.
You know, that kind of opened our eyes to just, you're not just teaching the subject, you're working with the person and the administration pieces that go with it. So,
Which are numerous.
yes, countless.
So for the fifth grade class, were you subject area specific, or were you responsible for a piece of the curriculum?
Yeah, it was, again, Larry and I kind of fell in this little unique experience, because when we moved into the fifth grade, it was just 2 teachers for the entire fifth grade. And the one teacher, my teacher, her name was Ann Woodson. She was responsible for mainly the math.
I see.
And there was a spelling piece. They kind of took the spelling part out of language arts and separated it. And Miss Dottie, who was the other cooperating teacher for the fifth grade there, she took more of the social studies piece, and they combined with some of the language and reading. So we didn't have to do everything.
Right.
However, there was a time period where Miss Dottie had to leave on medical reasons. And
Whoa.
Miss Woodson also had to leave. And
Really?
we were kind of in a unique situation, and Towson was very involved in making sure that we were taken care of as you know, student teachers.
Yeah.
And you can't just throw us in there as the real teacher because it's convenient for the school. But the school and Towson had such a high regard for both Larry and I. When they sat us down, they said, if you feel comfortable, we're going to let you guys continue the lead. And Larry and I agreed that I would handle the math because I felt more comfortable with it. He would take the social studies piece, and then we would continue to collaborate with language arts. But what Towson did is they stepped in and said, we're going to get you guys somebody to monitor the language arts so you can focus on the math and the social studies, because Larry and I were very comparable with each other, meaning he could really handle the social studies. That's what his undergraduate focus was on. Where mine, I was stronger in the math department. And so they allowed us just to focus on that, which was really nice, because then it took some of our planning away, and we could really hone our skills in and how to put a good lesson together and have all the key pieces. But it grew our class sizes. We went from 20 students to 42.
Oh, sure.
So the behavioral management piece came in, and that was something new, to see if you go from 20 to 40, what does that mean now? And it was a wonderful experience. And the two cooperating teachers felt terrible because we had to go through that. It wasn't anything they can control. You know, they had their reasons, but it ended up being really beneficial from when I moved into my actual teaching career, because then I had all those experiences to go with me. It wasn't going to be something new. I knew I had some plans to go, and that was fantastic. So yeah, it was really nice. I'm just thinking about all the different things that you know, I got to experience in the class, and even the little things. I had a first grader, and I'm going back to my first grade placement, a little boy named Donald, and I still tell this story all the time. And he would have these fits of sneezing, and I'm in my first observation lesson, and I, you know, I've got the principal there, I've got my mentor teacher, you know, I have my advisor from Towson, and they're all watching me, and Donald's over there just going, and I knew that meant he had to sneeze, and so I took the tissue box over and I said, Donald, if you have to sneeze, it's okay, just here's the tissue box, because he was very conscientious. He didn't want to sneeze in front of anybody. He'd say, oh no, I'm good, Mr. Heath, I'm good. I said, okay, and my mistake was I stayed right there to continue teaching the lesson, because a few seconds later he went and he let out this huge sneeze, and I looked down and I said, Donald, neither one of us is moving. And he looked up and he just had this string that was connected to my suit pants and to him still, and we just looked at each other, and it was like, how do you get into these experiences? How do you get into these situations? And then that's the last time I'm going to wear a pair of suit pants to work when I'm teaching, you know, first grade. And it's those things that were just, I keep thinking, so when you see me looking back, that's what I'm looking and thinking about, and those experiences, so.
Of course.
Yeah.
So you're at the end of your program, and you're looking for employment, I'm sure.
Well, at the end of that program, I'm looking for employment. My wife and I had gotten engaged. That's a little sidebar. So I was threw that into the mix because I wasn't busy enough, right?
Yeah, right.
And I'm looking for a job. And at the time, you know, it was becoming increasingly difficult for a teacher to get a job. But having a math background, I didn't have a math degree, but having the opportunity, like I said, to just teach math, that gave me a little bit of an edge.
Yes.
Yeah, and principals, when I was in the interviews, would say that. And say, oh, math is your thing. Would you be interested in teaching math? I said, well, I just want an elementary position. If I could, I preferred 5th grade, 4th or 5th grade, because I liked the math content. You know, that was more appealing to me at the time. And I just was willing to go anywhere. But I wanted to stay in Baltimore County. That's kind of what I was more exposed to through my wife and through her family, who were all Baltimore County teachers. And so I felt comfortable with, I would have someone to go to. But I also had student taught in Anne Arundel County, so I was interviewing in Anne Arundel County just thinking, just give me a job. I want a job. I want to be a teacher, and I'll go anywhere. And I was offered a position at Cromwell Valley Elementary School as a 5th grade teacher. And in the interview, the principal, Jan Clemens, she said, you're just going to teach math. And I thought, this is it. This is where I want to be. And it was a magnet school. And so the population was not to exceed 72 students per grade level. And so my teaching experience went from 40 students in my math class to 19.
Whoa.
You know, and that was just wonderful, because you can sit there and break the students down into groups of 3 or 4 and have time to work with everyone. And it was awesome, and I loved it. And I ended up working there for 3 years.
Uh-huh.
And then my wife and I were expecting our first son.
Uh-huh.
And at that time we were living in Pennsylvania, and my commute was an hour and a half
I see.
each way. So something had to give.
Uh-huh.
And I did something I thought I would never do. And I interviewed at a middle school.
Oh my heavens.
And I've been there ever since, and it's been 10 years.
Wow.
And looking back on it, I loved elementary school,
Uh-huh.
but I'm really having a lot of fun with the middle schoolers. And
Isn't
I
that
thought I would
interesting?
never do that.
Yes.
You know, and even my parents look at me and say, to this day, "You're teaching middle school? Really?" And it's just the quirkiness that these bring. It's a new student every day because they're going through so many changes,
Uh-huh.
you know, internally,
Uh-huh.
and trying to figure out who they are.
Right.
It's like a new student every single day,
Yeah.
and I just love that experience.
When you so you accepted a position in middle school, and where was that?
Cockeysville Middle School.
Ah,
So-
well, much closer to where you were living at the time.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Well, and were you a bit apprehensive, having had your little middle school
Yeah.
substitute teaching experience?
Yeah, I was apprehensive because in my elementary school, I had a lot of tricks of the trade with my guys.
Sure.
One of the things that I was famous for, if all of my students in the classroom did their homework for the day,
Uh-huh.
they wanted me to do a cartwheel, which was kind of quirky. But on recess one day, I had some students who were gymnasts,
Uh-huh.
and they were doing cartwheels, and they invited me to do a cartwheel
Uh-huh.
with them, and they found out that I just can't do them. You know, I get up to a certain point, and then I just, gravity takes over.
Uh-huh.
So we turned it around and said, okay, since, you know, I've been teaching you guys how to learn math,
Uh-huh.
why don't you guys become the teacher and teach me how to do a cartwheel
Uh-huh.
to show them that everybody's a teacher. We all have to work together,
Yes.
and you always have something to offer, you know,
Uh-huh.
and share that with people.
Uh-huh.
And hook, line, and sinker. I think I did a cartwheel or tried a cartwheel every day for the rest of the year. And then when the next class came in, they had heard I
I'm
would try
sure.
cartwheels.
Uh-huh.
So I thought, well, I can't take that with me to middle school. They're not going to buy that.
Yeah.
And I was really nervous. But I was also lucky that at Cockeysville Middle School, I had a cousin who was a teacher.
Mm.
And after the interview, he went to the principal and said he wanted to work with me.
Oh,
And so my
nice.
position went from 8th grade, which I was really concerned about, to 7th grade.
Uh-huh.
And his name was Ryan Warfel. And so Ryan and I had the 7th grade math curriculum,
Wow.
which was Algebra 1 and pre-algebra.
Uh-huh.
And I was really nervous. And on my first day, I'm standing there in the hallway, and the kids are no longer at my you know, belt. They're now, some of them looking me eye to eye, and that's, you know, I'm 6'2".
Yeah.
And I said, wow, 8th graders are that tall. And he said, no, that kid's a 6th grader. 6th graders are that tall? No, he ended up being a unique student,
Uh-huh.
very tall. But it was kind of intimidating.
Yes.
And my first class, I'm sitting there, my first class was 32.
Mm.
The bell rang.
Mm-hmm.
We had morning announcements, so that was kind of a breather. I thought, okay, I hope these announcements go on for the next 30 minutes and I can get myself together. And it was the first day, it was 5 minutes, and it's showtime.
Yeah.
And I've got to stand up in front of all these middle schoolers. I know the content, that wasn't the problem. The concern was, well, how do we run this in the school day? What are the nuances of this building? And how do things work, such as just, if they want to go to the bathroom, do they just go? Is there a pass? Is there a time frame that we have to avoid? The little stuff.
Uh-huh.
You know, all that stuff was really nerve-wracking.
Absolutely.
And I had a really good homeroom. And I had this one boy, his name was Keenan, and Keenan stood up and said, Mr. Heath, we know you're new, but we're going to take care of you. And okay, we're into this together. So, and it worked out to be really good and a lot of fun. And I really feel like I was meant for middle school now, because I love it. I
Yes.
just love it. It's frustrating, as you know, from day to day, you can go home and just crash out and say, what happened today?
Yeah.
But it's a brand new day the next day,
Yes.
and it can be exciting, and what you make of it, and just watching the children grow. And so I have a project that I do with my students on the first day. We take pictures, and we take their first papers, And I don't tell them whether they're right or wrong. We don't grade it. And at the end of the year, I have that picture that's stapled to that paper, and I give it back to them and tell them, now see how you've grown. And to see a middle schooler's expression, because you know how it is, they're invincible.
Yeah.
They know everything.
Right.
But they kind of transform back to that little kid and that excitement on their face. And I'm like, yep, it's been worth it. So.
It's good for you, too, to see those pictures and that change in performance.
Yeah, yeah.
Rewarding for all of you.
Yes, I tell them it goes both ways. When we're in the classroom, it's just not teacher and student. We're here together. We learn from each other, and we teach each other. And if you can get them to buy into that philosophy, I think that's where the education takes place for everybody. And that's where the compensation is.
And that, I assume, is a little bit different motivating middle school students than motivating first graders.
Yeah. My middle schoolers don't go for cartwheels or for an extra 5 minutes at recess.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't have recess in middle school, and I think they need that more than anything. I think they need that time to get up and move. So we build it into class. The motivation piece comes. We try to teach them. It needs to be more internal. They need to start finding a way that they become motivated, and not just from any outside source. And how do you teach a middle schooler how to do that? That's a very tough thing to do. And so, of course, we have games that we can play. We have reward systems. They joke with me because I don't give them the candy. I don't give them, the funny pencils that motivates a lot of students. I tell them, no, the motivation comes from, how did you feel when you finally hit that aha moment? And so we always start off with a really difficult problem. And I tell them, I get my energy from your energy. Let's feed off of each other here. I'm gonna start off excited because I love this content. I love being in front of you guys and working with you when you're working with me. So let's do this together. And if you stay high energy and energetic, they buy in. But they also know that if you're treating them with a lot of respect, they're going to give it back to you. And I find that middle schoolers are just trying to find out their own identity and who they are and what they want to be and where they want to go in life. And okay, I'm in a classroom because I have to be here. And if I'm looking at systems of equations, when am I ever going to use this? And I tell them, that's a great question. You may never use it. It's the process you go through in trying to figure out this problem for later in life. And if you work with them and teach them it's okay to be individuals and treat them with respect and care, they give it back. And that's the difference, I think. The little guys, they need that too. And, but I think it's a little bit tougher with middle schoolers to see that, because they come in with a bit of an edge on them, on their, or a chip on their shoulder. And if you can show them that there's an adult that will give them the time of the day, regardless if their hair is blue or they're having a bad moment, and you show them that you care, yeah, they'll work for you. They'll be there for you. So that's where I go with my motivation, and it's fun. I know I keep using that word fun again and again,
No, but that's
really,
wonderful.
It really is.
Yes.
So.
So you've been doing middle school now for?
About 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. At any point, have you considered moving into administration? This is something that always, well, you know.
Yes and no. My elementary school principal and assistant principal, from the day I got there, said, we need male administrators in elementary schools. We need. And I said, well, okay, you need good administrators, regardless of who it is, gender or anything. But they said, no, you've got a good presence with them. We want you to become an administrator. And I shied away from it, because I thought, I'm brand new, I don't know anything. I just want to know how the school classroom works when it's just mine and there's nobody else there to help me if something goes wrong. So I kind of put it on the back burner. And then when I went into middle school, the principal from my elementary school called the current principal and said, "You got a good one. You need to make him an administrator."
Oh.
And I never knew that went on until about 2 years into my middle school career. And Phil Taylor, who was the principal at the time, pulled me aside and said, "Now listen, I've talked to," and he just rattled off a slew of people and said, "They all think you should become an administrator. I think so too. Why don't you think about it?" And I think that's an indicator of a good boss or a good administrator or somebody that's in a field that's because you want to advance the people in your own field. You want them to become a stronger, whether it's a teacher or an administrator, or whatever that career may be. And so he kind of started pushing me, and my father-in-law was a principal for the county, I think somewhere around 33 years. And so I got a lot of guidance from him.
Yes.
And it's appealing, you know, for a lot of reasons, because then I get to work on a higher level with the curriculum and how the content is taught or developed through the grade levels. But I love the classroom.
Yes.
And the class, I mean, I don't think anybody works harder than a classroom teacher. Now, I know there are people who will disagree with me, and that's okay. We all work very hard. But when you have 30 individuals who are dying for your attention and who have their own individual needs, and you've got to meet all of them, and then you have the deadline from the curriculum, and then you have a grading deadline, and all those other pieces coming into play, how do you do it? How do you put it all together? And I just love the classroom. I love that interaction with them, with the students. The administration piece I see is, okay, I'm not going to have that. And that's why I went into education, to work with the students and to work with the people within the classroom. And to me, as an administrator, it would just become a job. And it goes back to that whole life-changing choice. It's not a career. It's a choice for me, and I love it. And I love watching my students grow and hearing about their experiences later on in life. I mean, I said earlier I have a brother, and he's my twin brother. And we look identical. And he doesn't have the beard right now, but and he'll be out somewhere, and it doesn't matter if we're in South Carolina or if he lives in Anne Arundel County now. And he'll be out to dinner, and people will come up to him and say, "Hey, Mr. Heath, it's so good to see you," and they're excited, and they'll sit down at his table and just start talking to him. And then usually about 5 or 10 minutes in the conversation, he'll say, "Well, I'm his brother." And
They may not believe him.
Well, no, he usually has to take out his license or something like that. But it's great when the students will acknowledge you later in life. It's because you made some positive impact that they remember, and they're willing to come up to you. Because I'm sure you've seen teachers or people that you know, and you kind of shy away from saying hi from them because it's tough to go up and just say hi to somebody you haven't seen or talked to in a long time.
Yes.
And to do that with a teacher. And so I find that as a very rewarding piece of the career. If they're willing to come up to you 7, 8 years down the road. I've been invited to high school graduations.
How wonderful.
Which is just
special.
That's the reward. You've made that positive impact. And, whether they still remember systems of equations or not, that's not the point. The point is they've learned how to be a good citizen. You've made that positive impact on them, and something has clicked and made their life happier, and that's it. That's the piece. So with administration, back to your question, maybe down the road, I might look to go into administration, but it'll be tough to get me out of the classroom. So.
You mentioned in your last remark something about the facial hair.
Yeah.
Would you like to explain what
sure.
that's all about on camera?
In middle school, you talked about how do we motivate the students,
Yes.
and teaching them how to not only be a good student, but to be a good person, to be a good citizen. And our school is involved in Harvest for the Hungry. And we do that every October, and it's where the homerooms bring in cans of food, and we give it to the food bank or to different organizations, and we usually have fundraisers that then kind of tag on to that. And so our National Junior Honor Society tries to get all the teachers involved in to some kind of activity. And I'm usually a go-to teacher, whether it's you're dancing in front of the students or, acting like One Direction, the famous band now. They asked if I would grow a beard. And I said, well, no. I have a hard enough time growing hair just in general, and we have a lot of fun with that. At first I said, no, I don't think so, because I think it would be too itchy or just, I don't know, I'm not even sure how my wife would respond to a beard too, and they said, well, what if we set the limit at $600? And I said, all right, if you're going to bring in $600 for the cause, I'll grow a beard. I think it took them about a week to get the $600. They went in and talked to their parents and begged and prodded, but I also find they do that for the teachers they enjoy, and if they see you taking that step where you go outside your comfort zone for them, I feel like we're also teaching them it's okay to do those things. It's okay to do something out of your comfort zone for a good cause or for a good reason, and of course, here it is. It's getting to the point I've got a lot of white hair coming in, so that's showing my age a little bit, and having fun with that, and the students are just loving every minute of it. And
so how long will this continue?
To the end of November, so we've got, about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, 3 something?
Weeks. Yeah.
So I'm hoping it comes in nice and full, and they'll enjoy that on December 1st. But we have a lot of those activities at the school, and that's the other aspect of teaching that nobody tells you about. You don't learn that in a classroom. The things the students will come up with and the things you'll do for them, because you've made that special connection. We have a dance that we put on the end of the year as teachers. It's called Lip Stock, and it's a competition for the 8th graders where they lip sync to a famous tune. And the teachers also put on one, so we're in front, and like last year we had Dancing Queen. And all right, you put on a dress and go with it, and the students have a great time, and you just look back and go, I did this for you guys. But it's that connection again. And nobody prepares you for that piece. And, well, I come back to it, it's fun. So.
It's the whole package, and you just don't know it all.
Right.
When you first get started, and it changes too. Absolutely.
But I also look back at it and think back to my teachers when I was in middle school. I told you earlier I wasn't the best academic student, and I have to credit my wanting to be a teacher to a former teacher of mine in middle school, and he was my 7th grade math teacher, and his name was Mr. Ryan. And I've never had the opportunity to go back and say thank you to him, and I wish I would have. Because he knew that while I was acting out and not behaving appropriately in his room, even when he would throw me out of his room, for the class, he would always come out and talk to me in a calm manner. And I look back at that and thought, wow, the patience that man had to possess to control his anger for the actions that, not only I had acted the way I acted towards him, that showed a lot of respect. And so, every so often I just sit there and say thank you to Mr. Ryan to myself, and I really should take the time and try to find him to say thank you, because it's really because of him that made me think about teaching math. And now I'm teaching math at the 7th and 8th grade level, and there it is. So.
Is there anything that we've forgotten, anything that you
want to share? Well, just my experience at Towson has been frustrating and wonderful. And it's kind of like teaching. There are frustrating parts. It's that growing part, and it's wonderful. And it's because of Towson University giving me all the experiences in my life. It afforded me the opportunity to learn ballroom dancing. It's where I met my wife. There's a teacher here at Towson. She has since retired. Her name was Carolyn Walter. I took a ballroom dance class from my older brother. He was getting married. And she told me I was the absolute worst dancer she's ever seen, and I would fail her class. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to fail a gym class. So she offered for me to come back the next semester, and that was actually a trick that she had. She
Ah.
wanted to take me and make me a mentor. And she knew that I would be good at teaching.
Uh-huh.
And so she said, I'm going to make you my special project. And she made me into a pretty good ballroom dancer.
Well, there
and,
you go.
That's where I met my wife, Marie.
Uh-huh.
And Marie has also been the person who gives me motivation and has guided me through some of the experiences I've had in teaching. And it's also because of her that I've become a teacher and a very good teacher.
Uh-huh.
And I now teach students at my middle school how to ballroom dance.
You do?
Yes, we have about 100 to about 120 students ranging from 6th grade to 8th grade who come to school an hour early Wednesday morning. So they get to school sometime between 6:50 and 7 o'clock to learn how to ballroom dance. And
And you're the
that's pretty
instructor?
awesome. Yes. Yes, along with a gentleman named Bob Russell. He's the motivator of the group. He'll get them together, he'll get them there, and then I'll teach them how to, whether it's swing dance, waltz, tango, foxtrot. And Towson afforded me that chance to learn that, and that's something that I've kind of, has become my identity now. And if I hadn't come here, I don't know that I would have had that experience, you know. And
Exactly.
because
I don't know either.
yeah, well, because I growing up, dancing was, I mean, I like to dance, but I would have never ballroom danced.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that other universities offer it, but it was Carolyn Walter who pushed me to learn it and encouraged me, and also taught me how to teach too, because it's all those relationships that I've had with the professors here at Towson, and each one of them has taught me what it means to be a good educator. Each of them had something to offer, either words of encouragement or a style that they just presented. And I try to take that and think about that in every day that I'm in the classroom, and what can I offer to my students that I was given as a gift from my, you know, professors. And I don't think people look back at that enough. And if we weren't sitting here in this interview, I don't know that I would have voiced that as often, you know, because I think about it, and I, you know, and how can I relate this information to a student? And I pull from my professors and their mannerisms. And, you know, I mentioned Dr. Crash earlier and how he just approached the subject of math with us. And it wasn't, here's the skill, learn it, you have to learn it. It's enjoy it, enjoy the process. Let's look at it together. You know, it's a problem, so let's break it apart and just, it's the whole, give it an old college try. And if you're wrong, that's okay. Let's try it somewhere else. And I have to thank Towson for that, because the professors here, they're special, they're unique, they're dedicated, and they love what they do. And because of that, they make the students here better for whatever it is they're going to go into. And for I think the education students gain a rich experience because of their professors. And I think more people
That's good to hear.
should go back and say thank you.
One last question.
Sure.
What kinds of advice, wisdom would you share with individuals who are considering teaching as a career?
That's a good question. That's a tough one. Sleep, get sleep often. Go in it 100%. Put your whole self in it. And by that, make it your life. Make it your passion. Because if you want to impact someone's life in the way that you're going to get that opportunity to do so, do it with all of your heart, because that opportunity that you have to impact that student's life in a positive way, not everybody gets that opportunity. And that will stick with them for the rest of their life. So make it your best effort. And you're going to be tired, you're going to be frustrated, and it's going to be all consuming. But in the end, take a deep breath, or even in the middle, take a deep breath and look and say, yeah, this is worth it. Look at the smiles and look at the expression on the children's faces. In that aha moment, take it and hold on to it, because that's the gift they're giving back to you. And I don't think there's anything in this world that can give a similar gift to you. And that's what I would say to them, because it's going to be tough. But take a moment to yourself and look at the gifts that you're receiving and make sure that you're giving everything to your students, because they want it. They deserve it. So if you're going to be an educator, give it to them. Because what you put into it, you're going to get so much more out of it. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of advice I would give to somebody going into education, because you can tell them what it's going to be like in a classroom, the administrative piece versus the curriculum piece, the community aspect, when you have parents coming in. Mm-hmm. But you can't prepare them for what you get in return from the students. There's no, physical, tangible, object that you can say, okay, this is what I got in return.
Right.
If you're looking for that, education isn't for you, and go out there and be with them, get in the mix. So that's what I would say.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yep.